this is a heavy dose of Rene Rodriguez. So framing yourself, the love technique, those kind of things. And then I sent out an Instagram post to some of the folks on the call this morning. It was a guy named Jeremy. God, I can't remember his last name. But anyway, he's a sales guru apparently. But it was talking about asking for referrals. I sent it to you too, Brendan. But it was sort of like we were talking about last week, like Laura, you were saying how you're going to ask for referrals. But I sent it to you as well. But it's just it's good to check out. It's just a way. It's just a way to ask. It's the typical Chris Voss way, like, hey, let me ask you something. How have we done for you? What was the most beneficial thing that we've done so far? And then you go in and say, hey, listen, let me ask you something. Would it be absolutely crazy to ask for you to send maybe 2 or 3 people that I may be able to help as well? So the answer, you want to get the answer of, oh, no, not at all. It's almost like, hey, did I catch you at a bad time? Oh, no, it's fine. But I thought it was interesting because this Jeremy guy, it was like right out of Chris Voss's book. So I thought it was interesting. So I sent it to a few of you on the call.
Yeah, it's language changes everything, right?
Yeah.
And when you're in that moment of like, God, how do I do that? And you don't have the language, it just seems like it's impossible. Like whatever somebody else can do, how can you do that? There's no way that could happen. And I think that's the bigger picture is always like, you said it. How can you frame something? And the only way to frame something is with a story or with language that's very clear so that the person that you're communicating with all of a sudden doesn't have a choice other than to listen to your communication and understand their role for whatever the next time period is. So for the next 2 minutes, I want to explain to you guys while I'm driving in the car here on this curvy road exactly how to do that. And then when the 2 minutes is up, you guys can ask questions. By the way, that's a frame.
We've been framed.
You've been framed.
Yes.
Your brain is like he's in a car driving on a road somewhere to get somewhere. And he just told me to be quiet for 2 minutes because he's going to tell me something. That's just an example of language and detail. And I could add, and hey, if it's absolutely necessary in those 2 minutes, you can interrupt me. If there's something that's not clear. That's just a frame with a little out clause for you if you're like a child. I gotta go pee. I gotta pee. I have a question. So framing is just language with time and intent for an outcome. And I think Michael and I sat with Rene Rodriguez for 2.5 days, and on multiple occasions, he would say this is very powerful for the good, and if used in the wrong way, can be really bad. You remember that, Michael?
Yes, vaguely, but yes, I do.
Did you ever think, wait, what's he talking about?
Yeah, I didn't quite get it.
Well, I think this is what it is. I mean,
at the time I didn't get it, but yeah,
well, there's people that use like neuro-linguistic programming and like they say their frame is all for an evil outcome and they know how to delicately get people into it so that whatever the end result is something really bad.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if let's use like a historical figure, Hitler. He was able to like write a book and go through all these things of mind control to get a very small number of people to do a very bad thing over a very long period of time. He was a master manipulator. He probably knew how to frame everything to where people would do bad shit. I'm just using him as an example. So Renee would always say, hey, you know, obviously I want you to use framing and tie downs and all this language for the good, because it's a very powerful thing to be able to communicate clearly. And communicating clearly means in a perfect thing that if you're trying to help someone for the good and they're a frustrating lead, like you have the ability to use these things, use this skill, this language, so that you can communicate effectively so they can hear it and benefit. And then the mutual outcome is, oh my God, Gloracell, no one's ever said these things and this totally makes sense. What do we do next? And you're like, oh, that's great. You fill out the application and then we get your deposit and we move forward. Wait, Gloracell, that guy was the biggest jerk with me 3 years ago. I hated him as a client. Right? Michael, am I like 10,000 feet in the air, or am I being?
No, I think, no, you're good.
Okay. Is anybody understanding? I'm not seeing faces because I'm driving.
No, I think we're waiting for you to sort of explain, like example it, give us an example of the frame and
Okay.
how,
Okay. I think in the end, the question would be, we all generate leads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do we start our process? So how do we start? And I think our big thing now is using Smart Start is a frame, right, that we can say, hey, here's how we help you. Now, I think if you draw on a piece of paper like a circle and you divide it into a third, a third, a third, and above the circle you say this is getting a mortgage, like getting a mortgage in this circle, and there's 3 parts. 1/3 of it is the technical part of how to get the loan, like where to fill in the online link, what documents do you need, and like how does this all work. The second third is hey, what advice do I need? And remember, this circle can be from the client's perspective and yours.
Right.
So the second third is like, hey, what advice can we give them? Financial advice about their situation. And then the last third, again, from the client's perspective or ours, how do I execute, like when I find the house? Like, how do I make this happen? Like, what's the timing and the mechanism to like get the deal? So I think that the frame that we've created, Michael, is Smart Start. And Smart Start answers all 3, but really it's kind of the middle one of advice and counsel. And that's what we do when we're talking to a lead very quickly over the phone. Right. It is, we try to put a frame in their mind as soon as possible after that initial meet and greet called, hey, oh my God, I'm Michael. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw your text. How do you know Betty? Oh, she's my realtor. Oh my God, I met Betty at an Atlanta Braves alumni event, and she's amazing. And we've been Okay, cool. Right. That's just all the banter of the initial. Right. So the frame is, well, hey, if she didn't tell you how I work, let me tell you how I work. So that would be the most like elementary example that I can give. Mm-hmm. I mean, Michael, is that what you think that it is? I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if I'm right. I'm just saying that that's my answer for now.
Well, I was thinking in my mind, the frame is how you want somebody to see you and how you're going to help them. So it would be the triangle of trust. It would be, oh, hey, did Betty tell you how I've helped a lot of her other clients? Oh, No, not really. Okay. Well, would you mind if I sort of explain that to you? Oh, no, sure, go ahead. And then you go into it, right? And you're setting the stage of how you help people. And you can do this on anything. Like, for example, Parker and I were on a Smart Start a couple days ago. Sorry if you could hear those saws. And I've sort of framed the certified buyer pre-approval and framed it in a such that, hey, look, do you know that there are different types of pre-approvals out there? Oh, no, I didn't know that. Okay. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a couple minutes to explain the different pre-approval options that you have. Would that be okay? Oh, sure. Okay. And then, right, so you're sort of setting it up, and then we go through the different options. So you can set up, you could frame, you could have mini frames within your Smart Start meeting, within your first initial call. But I think, yeah, the initial frame is, hey, look, did Betty tell you how I've helped her other clients? Most of the time they say, not really. She just said you're really good at what you do. Okay, cool. Well, hey, if you don't mind, can I take a couple minutes and explain how I've helped a lot of her clients, how I think I may be able to help you as well? Oh, no, sure, go ahead. And then you go into, basically setting up that Smart Start. So that's what my initial thought was.
Yeah. And I guess if someone were to come on this call and listen to this and go, wait a minute, I don't understand what's happening here. It's so basic that if you miss it, it's the reason why you're selling on the phone and wondering why you can't get people to come in.
And it's easy. And by the way, it's easy to, if you have a busy day, you got all this stuff going on, it's easy to sort of skip this stuff, right? Sometimes I have to hold myself back and say, wait a minute, slow down. Like, don't cheat, don't cheat yourself. Make sure you take the time to frame things properly. It's very, right. I mean, show of hands, everybody on the call. It's so easy to just all right, just go right into it, get their stuff, send the link, and move on. But if you think about how that's such a disadvantage, because how many referrals do you get a month? You're going to get between what, 15 and 50, 60, right? On average, 25 referrals a month, maybe 30 right now. And so if you think about that, that's a $5,000 piece of business from front, right? That could be $5,000 in your pocket. So again, I think it's important to just make sure you really have this stuff honed in, and really it's just practice, right? Practice, but also remembering not to take shortcuts.
Andy, can you give us an example of when you don't have the time to frame and you forget? Is this resonating at all with anything you've done recently?
You're muted.
I think the easiest example, which we've all experienced, is when you get a call from the borrower who's already called 2 or 3 people and they're trying to put you in a box and they're getting to rate immediately, almost before in their first, hey, this is so-and-so gave me your name, I'm looking for the best rate, in the first sentence. It doesn't give you a chance to frame. And I think if we're really committed to this, we get really good, we can get really good at, okay, let's back out of that. Let's go back to the triangle of trust and then frame this before we even give in to this, demand. Essentially, it's not even a request. It's like a demand. They're not even giving you a chance to even, start. So I go back to that because the frame on that initial phone call is so critical. That's just something that comes to mind, where we can easily just be an order taker immediately and just go straight to Optimal Blue, or we can take a couple steps back and do the frame before we even get to the meat. Brendan says before you give them the cow, you got to figure out what, do a little bit more due diligence on that person and figure out what their deal is. And that you do that through the frame and through the triangle of trust. Michael, I do have, this is Renee Rodriguez's, Brendan gave me this. But I just thought it was interesting the pillars of persuasion, essentially. Like, because I was thinking about, I was like, okay, emotional frames are always really good. You know, client testimonials or success stories, you know, are good. So I just wanted to go through this really quick,
Yeah,
if that's okay,
sure. Yeah.
and just explain it, because the way he breaks it down, there's like 3 pillars of persuasion, and you can use either one of these to do a frame, because you can frame every conversation that you have
Right.
if it's a meaningful conversation. It doesn't just have to be that first conversation, you know, the first phone call. It could
Yep.
be anything.
Hey,
So
and time out. Hey, Benton, can you get a copy of that and just send it to the group afterwards?
yeah,
Thank you.
we've got copies. So the old the Greek philosophers came up with logos, ethos, and pathos. People have all probably heard those. Logos is like the logical brain. Renee says this is like arguments, benefits, facts, figures, data, numbers, statistics. So maybe that's like an analytical person where you're just literally giving them the facts. You have ethos, which is like your reputation, like your credibility, what they think of you. And then you have pathos, which is the emotional. So I immediately thought, well, the best frames that I believe typically like in a transaction are going to be the emotional, because those can hit pretty hard, because the clients are already in an emotional state, like going through a home purchase. But like with a realtor or a financial advisor, it might be the logos or the ethos. You know, the ethos definitely. That's going to be personal anecdotes, client testimonials, success stories, your track record, your titles, and then yeah, so you know, credibility essentially. So it's just interesting when you look at the dashboard here of like where you can take your frame. The more you understand, okay, I'm trying to get to a deeper level inside this person's head. You know, what's the best way to do that right now? And if you just get good at all 3, you know, and just really get good at the languaging, then you can use them all. It's literally like it can become secondhand. That's one thing from, you know, working with Brendan all these years is, you know, I can hear it in his conversations, the stories and the frames, and you know, it just becomes second nature at a certain point. But we do have to think about it, and we do have to practice it, and we have to be in a rhythm. If you get out of rhythm, then it's hard to, you know, get back into that.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. That was good. Brendan, you're muted. And also, by the way, I think it's important to know too, just from a tactical standpoint, if you get that first phone call and they hammer that whole rate thing or ask you something, you don't necessarily, that's not necessarily the time to overcome that objection, right? I think you can go back, you can say, hey, listen, you know, Andy, I totally get it. Rate's super important. Yeah. And if you're like me, you know, you want the best deal, you want the great rate. I totally get it. And let me ask you a question. Did Sally, did she explain how I was able to help her other customers? So you can pacify them, right? And sympathize a little bit with them. You don't have to overcome the objections too soon. You don't need to.
Mhm.
And then you go right back to framing it. So you're diffusing it a little bit, right? Versus, well, you know, what have you seen? What rates have you gotten? You know, I mean, it's not all about rate. You know, that's not the right time to go into it. You just have to diffuse it, and then you go right back to framing the situation, right?
Yeah.
See how it goes, right?
Mike, can you guys hear me? I'm on a
Yeah.
new mic thing.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you're saying to yourself, I'm really confused because I don't even think about any of this stuff, and I naturally have helped clients. Put yourself in Michael and I's shoes. Renee Rodriguez works with me, says, dude, you have to come to one of my 3-day events to understand how to influence people better. It's $5,000. Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to have a dinner. There's going to be 10 of us. We're going to have
we're going to have a 10-course meal. And then for the next day, I'm going to have you go through some exercises. And at the end, hopefully, hopefully you'll be like a better human being. Michael, hey, come to this thing with me. Brendan, are you sure? Dude, it's in Atlanta. Cough up some money. Come on, bro. Trust me. All right. We show up.
In the middle of COVID.
In the middle of COVID. Michael and I both in our lives had made a lot of money. And wait, we're going to learn how to communicate with people and understand how to sell from a guy. Okay, cool. The first day and a half, my brain was like, wait a minute, does Renee really think about all this stuff? Like when he's talking to people, like, is he this manufactured? Like, wait a minute, is he doing this now? Like he's teaching us how to communicate, but he's like thinking about what he's going to say. By the way, none of this, I'm just a human talking to you guys right now. He's so ingrained with understanding how the other person's brain is working. He was teaching us the stages of communication so that we go, wait a minute, I've missed some of these fatal signals in communicating and influencing. And maybe now if I slow down, like Andy just said, and you become aware of what you're framing, then you can listen and really hear your prospect. And so it took us several exercises, me and Michael, to realize, wait a minute, this is so basic and we use a lot of it. Like we're using a lot of framing. You guys frame every day. It's just, what are you framing? You might just be framing, hey, here's what I need you to do. Fill out this online form, and then we'll get back to you. And me and my team will go through the pre-qual, and then we'll call you back and let your realtor know. That's a frame. The client just hears, okay, there's something these people do, and then they get back to me. That's a frame. It's just not one that sets you up as a consultant to answer more questions. So you're framing and using all these things, just maybe not in the way you want to. So, Michael, do you remember in the conference when Renee said, hey, we're going to do a listening exercise?
Oh, yeah.
Walk them through what this listening exercise was and how we maybe try it on the call today.
Yeah. So I think I think we may have talked about this a few months back, I'm not sure, but it's really about going deep into, like, let me back up. You've heard of the Ford example of how to build rapport, like, what is it? Family, occupation, recreation, dreams, maybe, or goal, right? That the Ford. And I think that gets you to, like, that's very surface level conversation, and you learn a little bit about each little piece of somebody. So this is sort of like the opposite of that. Instead of just surface level going wide, really you're going really deep into the conversation. So the example was, we had to go from one person to the next person to the next person. So it's called the LOVE technique. LOVE stands for listen, observe, validate, and expand. So, and I've, also called it, like in the past, called it 4 questions deep, right? So instead of asking one question, add another, add another, add another, and you go very deep into a conversation. And I think you can get deeper and understand somebody better by doing this. So we started, and the rules are this. If I said, let's just say, hey, Brendan, where are you from? He would then say, he would give an answer. He'd say, I'm from what? Washington.
I'm from Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh, Alexandria, Virginia. So the listen is, I'm listening to his answer, right? Observe, listen, right? Validate. Validating is just saying something like, oh, cool, Virginia, that's awesome. That's a validation. Or if somebody said, Yeah, I just graduated from college. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's a validation. But do not ever bring it back to yourself. That's like the key rule. You can't bring it back to yourself. Like, oh, I love DC. That's where no, it's not about you. Again, you have to be very careful. Don't bring it back to yourself. So validate is just simply a comment. You're making a comment about their answer. So I could simply say, oh, DC, sweet. That's awesome. And then expand. So expanding is going to another question, the next question about what he just said. So it could be, and then it would go to the next person. So the next person would then say, oh, they would have to expand it. So the next person might say, well, Andy, expand it, right? Andy, so if you're listening, Brendan says I'm from Washington, D.C. I'd say, oh, cool. That's awesome. If you expanded it, what would your next question be?
What brought you to Tennessee?
And then Brendan would say,
all right, I would give him an X. Because Renee would stop us. It took the group an hour and a half to complete the exercise. He would say, hey, Andy, you didn't expand him in DC. Jesse, what would be an expansion question? Hey, I'm from Alexandria or DC. What would you say to expand that?
So, oh, that's great. How long have you been there?
Great expansion. Now, pretend I'm the interviewer. I tell a story. Oh my God, I grew up there. I was born there in 1970. I lived there until 1992. I went to New York for a little bit, but blah, blah, blah. And then that story stopped. So you expanded me talking about DC. Michael, continue.
oh, okay. Oh, well, I thought we were going to run. Okay. So again, you would expand it, right?
Now, I guess this is tough because we're not really doing it.
Yeah.
At some point in whatever my answer was, now if we chose Amy, the key was always when you were up next as the listener to validate.
Mm-hmm.
And validate could, like Michael said, hey, that's cool. Oh my God, wow, that's neat. Or oh, awesome. Or there were 20 ways to validate. Sometimes you could just validate by going, oh man, like Michael, were there any other validations? That was always like
yeah, I can't think of many others because it's hard to not bring it back to yourself. Because I think if you think about when you're having conversations with people want to talk about themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people want to bring it back to themselves so often. And it's really hard to not do that, right? Oh, you have a golden doodle, so do I. I've got two. Let me show you. Well, no, it's not about you, right? So
the key was just listening and then going, that's really cool. You could even say, oh my God, I do love DC. That's not totally making it about
you. No, that's correct.
At some point, when the speaker would say something that led it somewhere else, normally we were all listening. That would be the next thing to expand on.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's say I said, oh, well, and then when my sister moved to Nashville, I just, that was when I thought DC was like no longer a good place for me.
Oh, got it. So how long ago was that? So how long have you been here in Nashville?
Oh, great. There you go. Expand.
Right. Well, and you could keep going. You could keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. I mean, you could have 20 questions, but I guess and I think the key is you're really, it's just a listening exercise, really more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's an exercise about how to listen and not talk, right? Salespeople talk too much. They don't listen enough, and they bring it back to themselves. So I think it's a pretty cool exercise. But if you had to simplify it, just go 4 questions. Just think about it this way: go 4 questions deep. I tell my kids all the time, like, ask questions. Like, it's so funny. My son will come home from class. I'll be like, hey, or my son will say, oh yeah, Ben's doing this, or like I'd ask him something simple like, oh, this is his best friend. Like, oh, okay, where's he going to college, or where did he apply to school? I don't know. Like, you didn't ask him that? He's your best friend. Like, what are you doing? What the hell? Like, what the hell do you guys talk about? Right? So, no, you ask him, oh, hey, where'd you apply? Or did you apply to schools yet? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I applied to 5 schools. Oh, okay, cool. Which ones? Boom, 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 boom. Oh, well, if you had to pick one, which one would you like to go to? What's your top choice? Like, kids don't have those conversations. When I say kids, I'm talking teenagers and such. But so that's an example of going, like I always tell them, go 4 questions deep. Have they ever done it? Probably not, but I'm still trying to pound it in their heads. So if you think about it, just go 4 questions deep on anything, on any topic. It shows that you're interested in people and you're curious. So that's part of the love. That is the love technique, right? Just 4 questions deep.
Yeah, and when in doubt, how and what?
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen?
Yeah, and I think this example is obviously very elementary and rapport. It's like the rapport stage, like you just met someone. But when you get into like an actual business meeting and you can go 4 questions and do the love, I think that's where it's going to be super impactful. And then when Brendan and Mike got back from that, the thing that I would just always tell myself internally is like, just don't say don't bring it back. Like, that's like the first step because we're so used to doing that. But yeah, I just think about like a realtor meeting and they mention something, you ask a good question about, how they like to work with lenders, and then they say something, and then you just pick a piece that's the most impactful and then validate it and then expand. And then if you can do that enough, I mean, we've all been in scenarios where the realtors feel like super closed off, surface level, but then we've also had some breakthroughs where it's like, whoa, they like totally spilled it. Like, what the heck just happened? So it's all to get to that point, obviously.
People like to talk about themselves. And realtors, I mean, like, show of hands, who has realtors like to talk about themselves? Yeah, I do. We all do. They love it, right? Customers like it. You have a silent clam, something that's hard to open up, ask them about their job. People, by and large, love to talk about work, their job. So it's trying to get people to open up. And I agree, Andy, like, especially on realtor meetings, it's great. Try it, right? What's your biggest challenge in the market? Oh my gosh, these leads, I have to get better quality leads. Okay, well, tell me about that. What are your lead sources now? It's just going down that, just getting deeper into the questions instead of the Ford technique. I'm not saying the Ford technique's not good. I'm just saying it's just a different idea.
Yeah, where I struggle too is I have a preset list of questions, Mike, that I'm like, okay, I'm make sure to ask like, these 3-4 questions, and then I don't listen and I don't go down the rabbit hole that they just gave me. So like,
Right.
it's the listening part that's really the skill, honestly.
Totally.
That's the skill.
Does anybody have any questions?
I know you're saying listen and observe. What's the
Uh-huh.
difference between those two? When you say observing, like, are you talking body language in a meeting, or are you talking?
It's a good question. I mean, he's obviously mirroring, maybe is more the observe, right, Brendan?
I think you're listening, but then there's also clues physically, and there could be tone on, DC, I loved growing up there and I just had to move.
Got it. Yeah.
So, where'd you move to? Well, fucking A, you just missed it. There's something in there that, wow. Seems emotional. What happened in DC? Oh, well, my dog got run over by a dune buggy, like whatever the story is, like, observing is where you want to validate whatever they're saying, but then you're aware of something that just occurred in that sequence.
Yeah.
So you're paying attention to their body language, to their expressions, to their demeanor, right? Instead of just like listening and just rattling off, I think is.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. So, hey, tell me about your job in Nashville. Like, you transitioned too quickly. You're not giving someone a chance to communicate with you, Claricel.
Got
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think observing honestly is like a hard one because we forget to do it.
Yeah.
Like, but it's easy to pass over.
Right, because we're thinking about something else, or we're thinking ahead, right? And we're forgetting, we're not in that moment. And I think that's sort of the key, is be in the moment
Yes.
100% and committed to that listening, right? Again, hearing listening for the gold, listening for the golden nugget, in a conversation. Salespeople miss stuff all the time. They miss cues all of the time. So.
Well, if you merge all this, as we're getting close to the end of the call, and this may have just scratched the surface on this stuff, if you think about it, like family, occupation, recreation, dreams, technique, Michael, to get somewhere. Chris Voss, hey, here's all this stuff to get somewhere. Love is kind of like a little bit of a mind mess, because you're like, wait a minute, what if they don't give me anything? Like, in my observation and in my validation, I try to expand and they like keep going nowhere. Like, and let's take this away from sales and just human interaction. Maybe there was nothing. Like, maybe honestly,
Yeah.
they're flatlined and there was nothing you could do because you're really aware, like you wanted to observe and validate and really get to know them. You weren't ready to sell them anything, and they gave you absolutely nothing. In that scenario, like, go over here to Chris Voss. Oh, hey, you didn't get him to confess. Go over here to like the core way. Hey, you didn't get anywhere. You suck. You didn't close them. The love way is like, hey, I tried everything I could to listen and observe what they were telling me. And, I'm sorry to say that I couldn't get anywhere with them to connect on any level. And I guess they're just not my client. Like, they need Rocket Mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So my point is this. This is a really deep thing that is not easy to be able to process in 43 minutes. We're trying to put our hands around a concept that could literally change your scope. Rene Rodriguez does an event called Amplify that he'll put you in the deep end. And by the end of it, you'll be crying. There'll be emotion. And you'll go, holy shit, how have I lived without being able to kind of listen and communicate more effectively? He's a master at it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Michael and I are complete amateurs, and so is everyone on the call. We know how to tinker with it, but could we ever really get it to where it could be just something that we use all the time? So here's my hope. Smart Start is a frame that we can all use and expand in our own way and use the tools. The before and after, like the 3 parts of a mortgage, we all have to do that, but Smart Start can let you put it all in a frame. And then if we get a little bit better at love, like through using maybe the All About You form, maybe in our initial triangle for trust, maybe during the Smart Start meeting, the way we interact, like that client, no matter who they are, feels heard. And ultimately, you're just expanding off of using Smart Start, and your closing percentage continues to just go up, and everybody marvels that Amy closes 90% of all of her referrals because she's a ninja somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she goes, well, I'm really not. I just have gotten really good at these 3 things. And everybody believes Amy is crazy because she's lying. Right, Amy? But Amy is just an amazing whatever we just described. And if I take it full circle, do you ever think that when you see the master ninja person that like takes someone's hand and flips them over, you know, like they have those videos where someone can literally like take a finger and poke someone and then they're like, oh, that's fake. Well, what if it's real? Like, what if someone's so good at like human interaction physically that they can literally make someone flip over just by like touching their pinky? And you're like, oh, okay, that's a 6th-degree black belt that knows how to use leverage and force to get somebody in a defenseless position. Well, maybe what we just talked about just now turns every one of your leads into someone that you can convert.
Try it.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. That's the homework, is like literally just write it down on your little sticky note next to your monitor. Love, 4 questions deep. Just remember it, try it.
And
It'll work. I think it'll help get to know people better, get deeper with your clients, and yeah. And you can try it at home too. Like, it's fun. I was doing it with my wife. She had no idea what I was doing. She's like, "Why you don't ask me this many questions? This is weird."
Wait, what's the purpose, Michael? What we could try to do, you and me and Benton, with this call is maybe create a 1-pager of visual with just the tactics and the big picture, so that someone could take it, put it on their desk, and say, okay, that was really 10,000 feet up in the air crap, but I do understand the whole concept. And if I could use it in bits and pieces, I can kind of fake it. Because I don't know about you, Michael, but this is going to make me think about my next meeting and realize all the stuff I'm not using and doing.
Right.
How like even you validating and talking about love, I can honestly say I probably need to hear it every single day.
Right. Well, it's like sharpen the blades, like, right, we know what we should be doing, and then we get lazy. It's like at the gym, right? You know what you should be doing, but you get a little lazy, and then guess what? You tweak your back and you're out for 2 weeks, right? So this is the same thing. It's just sharpening the blades, just refreshers. I mean, right? It's just top of mind. So, and then if you don't follow Renee Rodriguez on Instagram. I mean, you know, again, not nearly what you would get if you went to an event, but he does have good snippets here and there. So follow him. He's good. He's really good.
And he wrote a really best-selling book.
Yeah, and it's about influence, right? How to influence people. So that's really about, you know, what his whole thing is. So it's pretty cool.
Michael, I think we did a great job scratching the surface.
We did. We scratched it. So
just send me your Venmo. I'm going to send you some money because I think you did a fantastic job.
Well, thank you. I don't have Venmo. My wife does. I'll figure out what it is here soon.
All right, guys. I know this was a curveball. I know we just scratched the surface. Hopefully you got something that makes you think. And Benton and Michael and I will try to get a notes page out to you early next week that would just kind of give you, again, more context, and maybe look up Renee Rodriguez, buy his book, watch some of his stuff, and then try to incorporate what we talked about today.
Cool.
Awesome.
So, sounds good. Everybody,
thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.